It's happening right here in our backyard. And things just ain't the way they used to be. You take a glance and look into the mirror, but you don't recognize the one you see. I need your help today. Feels like I lost my way, and all my friends and family quit on me. Now I'm sitting in this darkness, trying to find out where my heart went. This ain't no drug, it's disease, the war that we ignore. The war that we ignore. Hey, the war that we ignore. Hey, the war that we ignore. Take one life, take two life, take two life, take three life, take four life, but how many more? One life, take two life, take two life, take three life, take four life, but how many more? Time to get back to me. Feels like I lost my path. I felt so lost inside. Don't know where I was at. That's when a voice it said to me, time to get off your ass. If you wanna find yourself, gotta do some things that you never have. Never the word that we ignore. The word that we ignore. Hey, the word that we ignore. The war that we ignore. Hey, one life, take one life, take two life, take two life, take three life, take four life, but how many more? One life, take two life, take two life, take three life, take four life, but how many more?
It was another night of heroin havoc in Cincinnati.
32 more people overdosed just yesterday. That brings the total to more than 75 just this Monday.
Those who overdosed say they were given free heroin as sort of a sample.
Ohio churches host another Hope Over Heroin event.
He brought a gun and heroin to his daughter's hospital room where he and the baby's mother shot up and overdosed.
Carfentanil is suspected, a powerful sedative used on bears and elephants.
We told you a couple of weeks ago about how heroin was being mixed with an elephant sedative.
Who are the baby's parents had heroin in their systems. Officers also found needles at the crash scene.
I'm having a rough year. Lost my mother, lost my mind. And they keep saying, son, keep looking forward, not behind. Everything here in time. They don't know just how I've been since you've been gone. Left me here all alone in a room full.
My name is Sherry Kleinholtz, and I am the Vice President of Programs and Operations.
I'm Daryl Short, and I'm the Director of Staff Development. Our society has a belief system in regards to people that suffer from addiction. Okay, they don't understand that it's a disease. You know, when they look at these people as bad people, they're not bad people. They're sick people trying to get better. We don't know the journey these people's come through, what they're suffering from, trauma, years and years of addiction issues in their family. They're raised into, to them, it's a natural way of life and or a way of coping with the pain that they're feeling. So when you think of a disease like cancer, diabetes, addiction's in the same neighborhood.
Brian Treon, I'm an emergency physician as well as coroner for Claremont County. I have been an emergency physician since I graduated from residency in 1997. I've been coroner for Claremont County since 2002. Heroin addiction is not a character flaw. It is a disease. It's no different than a heart attack. It's a medical problem. No one decided to become an addict, and it needs to be treated as a disease. I think that heroin addicts can very easily be looked down upon. You're using heroin, you must be pond scum. Yeah, good luck to you. You're going to have that conversation that comes to the emergency department when someone has a heart attack. It's the same process. It's a disease that needs to be treated. It's different in that it is a disease that you need to decide not to have. I can't decide not to have a heart attack. I can decide to get help.
My name is Chief Tom Sinan. I am the police chief for the village of Newtown. I also sit on the Hamilton County Heroin Coalition, the steering committee, and I'm responsible for interdiction when it comes to the Hamilton County Heroin Coalition. I've been with Newtown for 24 years and been with the coalition for 2 years. 10 years ago, the big thing for law enforcement was prescription pills. You had Oxycontin, oxycodone, Percocets. That was what we were dealing with. The difference then was, one is those pills came from a pharmaceutical company that made them, so you knew what was in there. If it's Oxycontin or oxycodone or a Percocet, yeah, that's what's in the pill. What we're dealing with now, whether it's heroin or fentanyl or carfentanil, we have no clue what the dealers are putting in it. Matter of fact, now we're finding that there's 10, 11, 12 derivatives of fentanyl. So the molecular structure is constantly changing, and that makes it difficult. So even though we were dealing with things in the past like crack cocaine, or whether it was prescription pills, we didn't see the numbers that we see now. And a lot of times those weren't necessarily, I'm not saying that there weren't people that overdosed, but there weren't people overdosing the numbers we're seeing now in the immediacy of it. And part of that is dealers, you don't know what you're getting when you buy a half gram or a gram of heroin. You don't know if it's heroin, fentanyl, carfentanil, it could be laxatives, it could be whatever put in there. You have no clue because that dealer is not a doctor, a scientist, or a pharmacist. Matter of fact, they could care less about your health. And although I'm not a big fan of Oxycontin and oxycodone, it does have some legitimate purposes. However, heroin from the street has none.
My name is Anthony Allen. My addiction is opiates. I've been addicted to opiates since I was 17 years old. 29 years old now, so been addicted to opiates for about 12 years. Started with Vicodin and Percocet, like most people. Simple pain pills, when I was a teenager in high school. And then it progressed to the heavier, stronger pain pills, the Oxycontin, the Roxys. I got introduced to Oxycontin. And, they're really expensive, $60 a pill for an 80 milligram pill. Eventually, you keep taking them and you keep taking them. You get to a point where physically you need them. And you get to a point where you don't get sick when you take them, you get sick without them. You need the drug physically to function, to do anything, to even just to get out of bed, to go to the bathroom, anything, to eat. You can't. The idea of food is completely out of the question, when you're going through a withdrawal. The pills got to be a little too expensive. So I discovered heroin and found out that it was a lot cheaper. For $20 worth of heroin, I could get the same effect as a $60 pill of Oxycontin.
My name's Stephen Kaiser. I'm from Hamilton, Ohio. And I hate using the word, I'm an addict. I used heroin. I used methadone. I used anything that had anything to do with opiates. Whether it was doctors, streets, whatever it made me feel better. Let's see, well, the first time I did heroin, we're talking heroin. The first time I did heroin, I was 17 years old. And I used off and on until about I think the last time I used heroin, I was 25. Well, I mean, initially, the doctor gave them to me, but eventually it turned into fun. I don't even know what to call it for real. I don't know. That's like the ultimate question. Why did I start using it? Like, I was stupid. I wanted to feel different, and drugs make me feel different. I didn't like the way I felt, and I felt like drugs changed that.
My name is Cassie, and I'm addicted to heroin. I was young. I was probably 16 when I started. When I shot it, that was the end. I think the beginning of the end. It was like completely different, you know. I mean, we got my friend's needles and we went to the ballpark and we did it. I mean, and it was just, I can remember as soon as I did it, I put the car in drive and I went to go down the hill and like I got this big rush. Like, it was crazy. It kind of scared me a little bit at first, you know, and I stopped the car and I'm like, whoa, you know, what the hell is that? You know, is that what they're talking about when they say that rush, you know? And it was. I want to get clean. I do. I don't want to live like this anymore. I mean, I'm miserable. I am. Like, I have good times, but I'm miserable. I starve, you know? I mean, I don't eat. Every bit of my money goes towards dope.
My name is Britton Pete Carter. My friends used to call me Petey when I was growing up. My connection with heroin is both personal and also business. As I said, I'm a chemical dependency counselor, but before then, I was a heroin addict. I've been addicted to heroin for the last 28 years now. So it's been my struggle life, mostly my adulthood. Oftentimes, I saw women that used heroin. Some of them would be months and months pregnant, near labor. Heroin doesn't discriminate. It doesn't care if you're pregnant. It doesn't care if you're not pregnant. Actually, I've seen mothers that have used all the way up into the 8th and 9th month. There was a friend of mine who used heroin, and actually, she went into labor. But before she got to the hospital, she wanted another snort of heroin. This is what her addiction drove her. It was a pain reliever, as well as it was that she was so addicted that she didn't want to be sick. She didn't want to be sick after the delivery, so she used.
Well, we started off thought we couldn't have kids, so we got into adoption, and after coming in second, like 3 or 4 times. Yeah. We were told we had to foster to adopt. At that point, we had a couple placements, very short term, and then we found out she was pregnant, and then we got a placement of she had just been born, right? Yeah. Well, within a couple weeks, hadn't left the hospital yet. She was born addicted to heroin. And we were told she was going to be able to leave at 3 weeks originally. So we started going down to see her at the hospital and everything. She was 4 pounds. And she was born 5, like barely above 5 pounds. Dropped down to almost like 4.5 before she actually started gaining weight. That's part of the addiction. She didn't get to come home at 3 weeks. It was actually 4 weeks, correct? She had to have some rescue doses, what they call it. And then when we brought her home, we had to give her
Phenobarbital.
Phenobarbital, okay. She was very, I don't know how to put it. She
was like uncomfortable in her own body.
Everything was difficult. I mean, eating, sleeping was almost unheard of unless we carried her paced down the hallways. I mean, I could do it. I could go down the hallway, turn, not hit the door, turn around, come back without opening my eyes. I mean, that's kind of how we would just alternate. Even tried taking her for a drive, and that actually made it worse.
Yeah.
Then we found out some of the other issues with the stroke in vitro.
Yeah.
She had a little bit of problems with, it was her left?
Her right side.
Right side.
No, I mean, she had tremors when she was little.
Tremors, yeah.
Just real not able to soothe her like a normal child, you know.
You couldn't lay her down. If she was asleep, you were committed because you actually had to hold her the entire time. Yeah, it's challenging, and I couldn't imagine one getting through the system, getting by the system, and having someone that has their own issues have to deal with that. I'm actually thankful that she got found when she did, and regardless of her issues, at least she had somebody that was going to take care of her. We just found out that she has some permanent hearing loss that possibly could be progressive, but it's her cochlea.
Yeah.
Were not developed, and it's all traced back to in vitro not developing at the proper times, and I mean the list goes on and on.
She would rather sit with us than go and play if she doesn't know a lot of them.
It's so easy to say, look, look what you're doing to this child, but nothing else seems to be working. You have to really step back and look and realize that child is not choosing to do this. You're choosing to do what you're doing, whether you know it's right or wrong, or you just think you're not going to get hooked, or you're not going to OD or whatever. But that child doesn't have that choice.
I never overdosed when I was using heroin on the street. The first time I've overdosed was in prison. And I was shooting heroin in prison. Actually, it was mixed with fentanyl. And I overdosed in prison. And after I came to, it was so crazy because, the urge to use was still there. It was as if, I had a reprieve to use again. And I immediately sat on my bunk and looked for the rest of my heroin I had.
I'm Lakshmi Cody Samarco. I'm the Hamilton County coroner. To be a coroner in the state of Ohio, you have to be a physician. So either an MD or a DO. You have to be licensed in the state of Ohio and had to have been practicing for 2 years immediately preceding taking the position. The single most common cause of death in our office is natural, to tell you the truth. So that's natural causes. But unnatural causes of death for the last decade in Hamilton County has been drug overdoses. So last year we had more drug overdoses than motor vehicle traffic deaths and homicides combined. The number of opiate overdose deaths just skyrocketed. And fentanyl in particular became the single most common compound mixed with the heroin, or fentanyl alone. In 2015, we had more fentanyl-related deaths than heroin-related deaths. But combined, they're still opiates. And then this last year, we've seen really unusual compounds being mixed with the heroin and the fentanyl. We've seen carfentanil this last year, the large animal tranquilizer. We've seen several different fentanyl analogs. Even as recently as last week. And even today, we had a discussion about the number of different fentanyl analogs that we're seeing, both in the drug seizures as well as in our overdose death victims. Well, the summer is when we first started seeing carfentanil. And on a spectrum of potency for opiates, with morphine being a 1, fentanyl being 100, carfentanil was 10,000. That's a potency. So it took very little carfentanil mixed with anything, and it could be lethal.
You'll usually get a telephone call that someone's coming in with an overdose. Typically, these people have already received Narcan. The difference between what is described on scene and what you see roll through the door in the emergency department are two different pictures. On the scene, this person was near death. They received Narcan. They come rolling through the emergency department on a gurney, sitting up, looking around. Obviously, they don't want to be here. And the first thing that they say to you when they walk into the door is, "Can I leave?" "Sir, you almost died. And you want to leave?" "Yeah, I'm fine. I want to go home."
My name is Tina Lakes. I live in Hamilton, Ohio. My connection to the war we ignore is my son, Brandon.
My name's Casey Thompson. I'm also from Hamilton, Ohio. And my brother is my connection. He's a deceased addict.
My son, Brandon, entered rehab for the first time in 2012. Completed the program, came out of the program, continued to use again. The last year of his life, he spent in another program, fought very hard, came out. We thought he had it this time, and we did find out after his passing that he did relapse in rehab. It's been very hard since Brandon's passed, the negativity. Dealing with the comments. All his life, I protected him. You do that with your children. And since his passing, I feel like I even have to protect him more. Drug addict, junkie, waste of human flesh, drain on society. That drain on society was my child. And remove the addiction, and he was my son. And I will fight for the rest of my days to get rid of this disease. It's what I have to do for him. I feel like since Brandon's gone, since May of last year, I can't really say it gets easier. My mom told me that there will be a day that it's not the first thing I think of when I wake up. It's almost like everywhere I look, there's a reminder of Brandon. I have this urge, I just want to hold him. He's not there and I can't do it. I search for something I'm never going to find.
My name is Gary Owen. I'm a comedian and actor. I was very naive to the epidemic of heroin and opiates until January of 2014. My brother called me and he was on the phone. It was first thing in the morning. In my eyes, things are going great. I just had a movie come out called Think Like a Man. That was a hit. Ride Along had just come out the week before. That was a hit. So I'm coming off 2 blockbuster movies. I'm at my house. Life's great. I have no cares in the world. Everything's getting ready to go do Think Like a Man 2. And then my brother calls me first thing in the morning and says, I think I'm going to die. I can't do this. I need you to help me. I got nobody else to turn to. And I have no idea what he's talking about. I didn't know my brother was doing heroin. I knew he smoked weed. I didn't know he was doing heroin. So I'm confused by the whole conversation. I said, what are you talking about? So I hit my wife's asleep. So I hit her, wake her up. She gets on the internet. And now within a matter of 15 minutes, we're just researching heroin. Like me and her both on our laptops trying to figure out what we got to do. And we call the girlfriend back. And when I called back, he shot up. And I could hear him moaning in the background. And she goes, he's out of it. And so she goes, we got to get him to a rehab facility. She goes, I got $100. She goes, we can send him to like some little halfway house in Cincinnati. And just in the 15 minutes online, I was like, nah, he's got to get out of town. So I found a place called the Quest House in Bowling Green, Kentucky. It's 4 hours away. So I called my mom. I said, you got to pick up Dallas. That's my brother's name. And I said, he just shot up. I go, and I don't know the extent of this. I don't know what's going on. Mom went and picked him up. And I met her 4 o'clock in the morning, the next morning. She sat with him all night, made sure he didn't shoot up, but he was kind of out of it the whole day. And I met her at 4 in the morning. We got in my car. We drove down to Bowling Green, Kentucky. Quest House doesn't open until 9. We got there about 8. Sat in the parking lot for an hour. And that time he kind of came to, and he just kind of knew what was going on. So he's in rehab for 4 or 5 weeks. He gets out. In that 4 or 5 weeks, I start researching, like, what do you got to do once you get out? Because I know that's not the answer. He can't go back to Oxford, Ohio. I said, he knows where to get the drugs. It's a small town. I said, I don't know what we got to do, but that's not the best place for him. And found out over the course of the next year and a half, he overdosed 2 more times. And he never called me again to help him, because I think he would have felt like he disappointed me. And basically, long story short, May 20th, 2015, he overdosed in the same apartment complex that he called me from. And he was working at the Bob Evans right next door to this apartment complex in Oxford. And I was like, it was everything wrong that should have happened. He should have never been able to work at that Bob Evans, because that's just too convenient. That's like, kid in a candy store. He knows where to go. So with that said, once he passed away, and honestly, you didn't ever think it was going to happen to him. I really didn't. And after that, then I really started researching heroin and opiates and how it's very accessible in this area. So who's to blame? Is it the drug dealers, or is it the pharmaceutical companies? It's just, it's tough right now to figure out, because you're angry and you don't know where to direct it. You know what I mean? So I'm trying to temper it. So what I'm trying to do is I'm just focused on trying to help other people instead of focusing on blaming somebody for my brother's death. Because in the end, it is everyone's decision, but I've learned it's definitely not a choice after a while. Your brain gets rewired and it becomes a disease. So that's how I got involved with this heroin opiate crisis.
So one of the things we did on the coalition was we pushed out Narcan to all first responders. We made it available. And I know there's this debate, and I give talks, and it was astonishing for me to hear people say, why don't you just let them die? And for me, my job isn't to let people die. My job is to save lives. And no other segment of society does anyone ask me to let somebody die. If someone runs into a telephone pole and it's their 3rd or 4th DUI, they don't say, just let that person die. I've been on runs of multiple attempts on suicide, and not once does society tell me to let that person die. Matter of fact, they said risk your life to save their life. But when it comes to heroin, people have actually said, why don't you just let them die? That's a human being. And what I tell people is, even if you don't have compassion for that person that's overdosed, have compassion for their family. Because when you're standing over that person that overdosed, you will realize that standing next to you is a mother, a father, a brother, a sister, or a son, or a daughter. And when you stand next to those people who are grieving, What you want to do is you want to make sure that that family never grieves again. And my thing with Narcan, it gives that user a chance. Is it 100% that they're going to go and get into treatment? No, but it's another chance. And when I look at the family, when we give Narcan, it's one more day that that family doesn't have to grieve. And to me, that's what our mission is, and that's what our job is.
Narcan, my experience with Narcan was working in a hospital. We did use fentanyl on a regular basis. It's a great drug. Fentanyl is a great drug. It's easily controlled. Small amounts work well. It works synergistically with some of the sedatives, and you have great control. You can easily reverse it with Narcan, so it's a great drug to use in a clinical setting. And so Narcan was meant for that, for quick and easy reversal of opiates in a clinical setting. Never in my life did I think we were going to be talking about making Narcan readily available to everybody in the general public, because they were going to have to use it to save somebody's life. And it's also taking more and more Narcan to save people. And it's not just the people using carfentanil, even with the fentanyl. So, the 2 milligram dose, which was your average dose. Well, Narcan is now coming available in 4 milligram doses for nasal use, for families of users and addicts. But there's no doubt that we would have a huge number of overdose deaths if we didn't have Narcan available.
To be honest, we save lives and foster hope and strengthen community. That's our goal. We work with the clients and their families to give them hope and teach them skills to help them survive in the real world. And when they get back into bad predicaments or situations, that we give them the coping skills that they need to be able to help teach them to save their own lives.
Heroin has slowly creeped up to be an epidemic. 95% of our clients are heroin addicted. So when you talk 90% of the clients that we serve that are addicted to heroin, and it's not decreasing at all. If anything, it's going up higher, and the ages are getting younger.
The biggest reason for relapse is the lack of coping skills. We can keep people safe and lock them away. You can put somebody in jail and lock them away. And as soon as they get out, you're wondering why they go out and use. And that's because life still happens, and they don't know how to deal with life. If we're not teaching them coping skills, we're not teaching them how to save their own life. If somebody comes out of jail or they go out of treatment and they haven't learned how to deal with getting into an argument, or learning how to take it when your boss yells at you, or learning how to handle a breakup in a relationship, or the abuse that they've gone through, that's very traumatic for them. If we haven't taught them how to deal with that, then we haven't taught them anything. And they're going to go back out and use, because when you use, you go numb and you don't feel pain. And that's what they're looking for.
And for the most part, except for sojourners, the most treatment centers, they will discharge you because suffering from the symptoms of that disease. Be it use, you're judged. You're not serious. You don't need treatment right now. You need to go work on your lead. That's not the case here at Sojourners. When we see those cases, we embrace that. We talk about it because we know they're suffering from a disease.
Honestly, I mean, there isn't like one thing that made me want to quit. I don't know. I hit rock bottom more than once. I hit rock bottom with a shovel and dug another hole. Like I don't know. I can't even say one instance that changed it for me. Like mentally, I guess I was at rock bottom. I'd had enough. Like I remember one time in particular, I started going to a methadone clinic, and I left the methadone clinic for a couple of weeks and went back to the streets for a minute, but I stole my parents' wedding rings. I don't know, my father, I don't know what made him go check that day, but for some reason he checked where his rings went that day, and he noticed they weren't there, and I was fucked up, man. I was knee deep in some heroin, and I was at a friend's house that I always ended up going to do it with, and my dad showed up, and honestly, I thought we was about to be fighting, but the scariest thing was how calm he was. Like, it wasn't even a surprise to him. You know what I mean? Like, he looked at me and said, "What'd I do with them?" And I knew what he was talking about immediately, because I seen the look on his face. He looked so fucking just disappointed and sick, and I don't know, man. He left, and I just sat there and I broke down, and I I just vowed that I'd quit right then. I went to the methadone clinic, and the methadone clinic, that's a whole nother story, but I mean, it led me to meeting this one counselor, this lady, her name was Volante. She was real helpful, man. She got me motivated. She got me like inspired to try to get clean. I've never actually tried. You know what I mean? Like, I just always said it was impossible. Oh, I can't be sick. I got to go do this. I can't be sick if I'm doing this. And that's what led me to going to multiple places locally, like Sojourners. October 9th, 2012 was the last time I did anything opiate related whatsoever.
You know, I'm a cop getting into this business of heroin a couple years ago, and I really had no clue about heroin or addiction. So now I sit alongside doctors, I sit along specialists and addiction specialists, and I think that's part of the thing is most people don't understand addiction itself. They only know what they think they know. But when you're in this group of doctors and addiction specialists and people that have been addicted, you start realizing that this is a chronic issue. I look at it, I know it's been described as a disease, I look at it as more of an injury to the brain, and it takes time to heal. So what I've been told from doctors and specialists is that on average 7 to 8 times for someone to go through treatment, 1 to 3 years for the brain to be rewired. And when you look at it from that perspective, I think you start understanding that this is not a short-term solution. It is going to be a long-term involvement on our end, on the end of the person that's addicted, on the end of the resources. We got to put that investment in that time. We got to give time for the brain to heal. And here's the thing. If it was a broken arm or any other injury, we would go to a doctor, we'd have them heal it, and it would take time. They'd say, hey, you need to rest for 4 to 6 weeks, whatever it may be. And I think that's why we need to change how we look at addiction, is an injury to the brain, and that brain needs time to heal. So they need time to be off that substance, and they need to rewire that brain. And part of that rewiring is not just the treatment end of it, but counseling and long-term care and support so that the brain doesn't go back to where it was before.
There are 2 things that need to happen. Number 1, the addict needs to want to get help. And at that exact same time that the addict wants help needs to be available. Occasionally, we'll have someone come to the emergency department who, I'll ask them, do you need help? And the typical response is, no, I went out of here. Occasionally, they'll surprise me and they say, yeah, heroin is a problem. And in these cases, I'll have the social services people come and say hello to the patients. And typically, we can get them help. Yes, call this telephone number tomorrow, and they'll get you your help that you need a week from Thursday. It needs to happen now, because that addict wanting help now is the time to strike. That addict a week from Thursday might change his mind about the situation, and I'm willing to bet half the telephone calls are not made.
My name is Michelle Dillingham, and I'm originally from upstate New York, but I've been living in Cincinnati for over 20 years, and my addiction was heroin. You know, today I'm a homeowner. You know, I run a small nonprofit. I'm actually running for public office. I'm a candidate, so I have a very public persona. And you know, for years I did not reveal that I was in recovery. And it was through a series of sort of awakenings and also time that I felt comfortable about sharing that I'm someone in long-term recovery, because there's still a lot of stigma to it. So today I'm someone who still attends 12-step meetings regularly. I sponsor women. I have a sponsor, and that's what works for me. And there's lots and lots of people who are in long-term recovery who definitely stay committed to the 12-step programs. So it's really important to me as someone who, you know, is comfortable now sharing about my story. The fact that I was someone who was addicted to heroin as a young person, as a young adult, and the fact that, you know, it really had a major effect on my life, and I have that experience. So it's really important today to have the courage and the willingness to share about my story, and to also to tell people that, you know, we do recover. You know, people can get better. It is a devastating experience. It is one that can be, you know, cause permanent damage. I've had health issues, long-lasting health issues from my using, but we do get better, and, you know, we become parents, and we become grandparents, and we become upstanding members of society, and we give back, and we become good citizens. And I just want to share the hope, that's there, that don't ever give up any hope on anyone. Because if you'd have met me 20 years ago, you might have written me off, and thank God that people didn't do that. So.
I'm Anthony Allen. I'm from Hamilton, Ohio. We spoke about a year ago. A lot of things have happened since then. The last year of my life has been one of the craziest, if not the craziest year of my life. On March 29th, 2016, I got a call from my little sister. She was trying to get a hold of my mother, wasn't able to get a hold of her that morning, so we were worried about her. We went over there to check on her, and when I went in the house, I found that my mother had passed away. She was dead from a drug overdose. A few months later, just right around the time I was kind of coming out of the shock from my mother's death, my cousin, who was 20 years old at the time, he was like my little brother, he passed away from a heroin overdose. It wasn't even real to me until that moment, until I found my mother. That's when the whole idea of how serious this drug is and this addiction is became real to me when I found my mother's lifeless body. It was traumatic. It was the most traumatic experience of my life, I'm sure. But so I had a couple weeks there where I had relapsed and I was struggling, but I've been clean since then. It's been almost a year. I'm in methadone treatment right now. That's the only way that I've been clean off opiates for the last year. And technically, I'm not clean off opiates. I'm in methadone treatment. So I'm taking an opiate prescribed by a doctor, but I'm taking it as prescribed by a doctor, as I'm supposed to. I'm not taking it to get high. I'm taking it to keep my body from going through the physical withdrawals that are eventually I'm going to have to face.
I am Cassie, and a lot's happened since we last talked. I got clean, I think it was maybe a month or two after we talked, and I believe I said that I was I used to think I was a functioning addict, that I could work and do all this and still be, I guess, functioning okay. And that was so false. It like downslid so bad. I don't even know. I mean, it just turned into something that I didn't want it to be anymore. I did that Vivitrol shot 8 days into being there, and it changed everything. I mean, everything. And I can say now that it is in your mind. I mean, it's a lot of it. Now, it is physical, but a lot of it is in your mind, because after that, I didn't crave it. I didn't want it. I didn't even think about it. I actually forgot that was a part of my life until somebody would talk about it in rehab and bring it up. And I'd be like, oh yeah, I did do that. Ooh. That part of my life is over now. There's bigger things and better things that I need to be doing and will be doing. I have a baby on the way. Never thought that I could have kids. I want a nice place for a newborn baby. I want my baby to be able to crawl on the floor and stuff. So I'm trying to just work this cleaning job, what I was doing before. And I'm actually a lot better too. I mean, for real, I don't have to leave in 4 hours because I'm dope sick. So that's great. But I'm working right now, but I have been thinking more here lately about going into school and doing that for sociology, to be some kind of drug counselor or something. I was always good at school, so I know that I can do it. It's just doing it.
I'm having a rough year. Lost my mother, lost my mind, and they keep saying, son, keep looking forward, not behind. Everything here in sometime. They don't know just how I've been since you've been gone and left me here all alone in a room full of friendly faces, in a world full of familiar places. My life has become so blue without you. When the only wish I wish won't come true. God spoke to me, not in my sleep, not in my dream. I heard his voice plain as day. And on the day you went away, singing songs, she's okay. Yeah, and I know he knows just how I've been since you've been gone. Left me here all alone in a room full of friendly faces, in a world full of familiar places. My life, it's so blue without you. When the only wish I wish come true. When the only wish I wish won't come true. When the only wish I wish won't come true.